speaking of Anthony Albanese, who would have thought it? But the ABC has been inundated with complaints for being too pro-coalition after the Prime Minister gave a testy interview with the public broadcaster's Alice Springs breakfast show. Stewart Brash conducted an interview with Mr Albanese on February 7 when he visited the Northern Territory, and the Ombudsman revealed, a report revealed 21 complaints were made to the ABC about that interview. Apparently, complainants were concerned the interview lacked impartiality because the interviewer asked questions that demonstrated a pro-coalition bias and repeatedly interrupted the Prime Minister.
We've got a little bit of that interview. Let's have a listen and then we'll talk about whether or not the ABC gave the Prime Minister too difficult a time. Here's what happened.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go at me for verbaling you over being on the nose with the electorate as opposed to being an underdog, but that's okay. Can I ask you one last thing?
Well, whatever. There's enough people join in. And there's a bit of a media, and the ABC join in on it sometimes.
Okay.
I've got to say.
I've got to say, 21 complaints. That must have been everyone who was listening to that radio program rang in to complain. But what was more revealing, I felt, than the interviewer's probing of Anthony Albanese, and I mean, he is on the nose with the electorate. Their primary vote is as low as it's ever been. It was a fair enough question. But Albanese then complained about the ABC interviewer giving him a tough time, saying we've got enough media outlets doing that without the ABC, which sort of is saying the quiet part out loud, that the Prime Minister actually expects to be given a easy run by the national broadcaster, which is what we've always said, and the Prime Minister clearly thinks, yes, they ought to.
Well, when he gives them payola of $1 billion a year, he might expect something in return.
Indeed.
Right? And this goes back to the point we were making before about why he's got Daniel Andrews in. He has a tendency to do this. He gets really testy with interviewers when they go places he doesn't like. We've seen him do it with our own Pete Stefanovic when he's tried to question him on comments he's made before. He's done the same thing over on the Today Show. When you get into territory, particularly previously it's been talking about the RBA and comments that have been made about whether or not government money contributes to inflation. He goes, oh no, the RBA's never said that, you're making that up. Well, it's all on the public record, and his response to things he doesn't like is not to go, look, I disagree with you on that one. Next question. He actually gets angry. And I think that says a lot about where the Prime Minister's head is at. He is supposedly saying behind closed doors that he thinks he can win the next election with an increased majority, right? I think in his head, though, he knows he's in a bit of trouble. And that's how he gets into a position like this. As for the 21 people who send in a complaint, I mean, come on. Imagine having that much time in your day and loving the Prime Minister so much that you would actually write into the ABC to say that I think this great bastion of left-wing broadcasting is somehow biased against the Prime Minister.
It actually doesn't surprise me because if you look at the amount of complaints that the ABC had over its coverage of the Gaza war, for instance, the majority of them have accused the ABC of being too pro-Israel. Its audience is just so starved of any balance that when there's any semblance of some, even just the faintest whiff of it, as there has been with the Gaza conflict coverage, then there's accusations of bias. In this example, it seemed pretty straightforward to me. This was a stock standard political interview. It's how it should be conducted. You have to ask tough questions of people in power, hold them to account, ask for clarification. Sometimes that requires interruption, which the host seemed to do fairly, and that's normal. But the ABC listeners and viewers have just come to expect that the broadcaster's a mouthpiece for the government.
Well, we should give some credit to the ABC radio host Stewart Brash for taking on the Prime Minister.
Like
brash by name, brash by nature.
Exactly, that was the problem. He was a little too brash for the genteel listeners of the ABC. But it's like, have you seen the drips on X or Twitter, as it used to be, who complain ad nauseum that Insiders on a Sunday morning has turned into some sort of Liberal Party mouthpiece? Like, there are actually ABC viewers out there who watch the ABC, and even the ABC is not left-wing enough for them. I mean, that's the sort of crazies we're talking about